The U.S. Department of Justice is suing the state of Alabama for attempting to illegally purge voters this close to the election. I'm Sophie from Democracy Docket. Let's break down this lawsuit and the Republican non-citizen voting myth. The DOJ sued the state of Alabama and Republican Secretary of State Wes Allen over a state program to remove 3,251 individuals from the voter rolls before the November election, in violation of a federal law that prevents the systematic removal of voters within 90 days of a federal election. Allen announced the voter purge program on August 13th, claiming that the goal was to target and remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. The state did this by going through its voter lists and finding registered voters who have allegedly been assigned a non-citizen identification number by the Department of Homeland Security. All of these voters were also referred to Alabama's Republican Attorney General Steve Marshall for further investigation and possible criminal prosecution, according to the press release announcing the purge program. In the same release, Allen conceded that it is possible that some of these individuals who were issued non-citizen identification numbers have, since receiving them, become naturalized citizens and are therefore eligible to vote. And that is exactly what happened. As the DOJ notes, the press release did not explain what efforts, if any, had been taken to determine the current citizenship or immigration status of the impacted individuals. According to the complaint filed by the DOJ, 717 of the 3,251 individuals targeted by the program were proven to be U.S. citizens who are eligible to vote. All of those people had their registration status restored after being required to submit paperwork confirming their citizenship. That means, so far, 22% of the non-citizen voters that the state removed from the voter rolls were actually U.S. citizens and were forced to go through a whole process to re-register to vote. The DOJ says this entire voter removal program in Alabama violates the National Voter Registration Act's quiet period provision, which prevents the systematic canceling of voter registrations within 90 days of a federal election. The department also alleges Alabama did not properly notify the impacted voters of all of their options to reactivate their registrations or re-register to vote if they were wrongly purged. Amid a recent surge of right-wing voter challenges, voter purges, and voter roll litigation, the DOJ issued new guidance last month for how and when local and state jurisdictions can remove voters from their voter registration rolls. In its guidance, the agency emphasized this 90-day quiet period.
The right to vote is the root of all our freedoms. The United States Department of Justice is determined to protect that right.
The Justice Department asked the court to block Alabama's voter purge program, order election officials to withdraw any notices of removal that they've sent to voters, and require the state to send mailings to educate eligible voters concerning the restoration of their rights, and adequate training of local officials and poll workers to address confusion and distrust among eligible voters accused of being non-citizens. This lawsuit from the DOJ is actually the second lawsuit filed against Alabama in just the last few weeks over this voter purge program. Earlier in September, a coalition of voting rights organizations and 3 naturalized citizens sued Alabama for its voter purge program, alleging that it has led to the unlawful removal of numerous naturalized citizens. In addition to claiming that this program violates the NVRA's quiet period provision, this lawsuit also claims that Alabama violated the Voting Rights Act by illegally intimidating voters. The plaintiffs say that since the state announced that it was referring all of the individuals on its list for criminal investigation, while knowing that many of the people on its list were eligible voters, the state was engaging in voter intimidation. The lawsuit says Secretary of State Allen acted with intent, knowledge, and reckless disregard in designing and implementing the purge program to predictably create fear of unwarranted criminal prosecution and stoke anxiety among eligible Alabama voters, particularly naturalized citizens, about criminal investigation and prosecution for registering to vote and voting. Additionally, the suit claims Alabama violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment by discriminating against naturalized citizens. The judge consolidated this case with the DOJ's lawsuit, which is just an administrative step, which means the cases will be heard together since they raise similar claims. Texas tried a similar antic in 2019. Then acting Secretary of State David Whitley announced that the state had found 95,000 quote-unquote non-citizens on the voter rolls and referred the names to the Texas Attorney General for possible criminal prosecution. But soon after, the state realized that tens of thousands of the voters flagged as non-citizens were in fact naturalized citizens. 3 lawsuits were filed alleging that this purge was clearly flawed and unconstitutionally violated voters' rights. As a result of a settlement in these cases, Secretary of State Whitley stopped the effort. And this botched purge ultimately led to his resignation from office. These cases are part of a broader Republican effort to sow doubt and distrust in our electoral system by spreading the lie that non-citizens are voting in federal elections in droves. Firstly, it is already a federal crime for non-citizens to vote. And secondly, studies have shown again and again that this phenomenon is an extremely rare occurrence. According to a 2017 study conducted by the Brennan Center, a review of votes in 42 jurisdictions in the 2016 election revealed that only 30 votes out of 23.5 million votes were suspected to be votes by non-citizens. In other words, even suspected, not proven non-citizen votes accounted for just 0.0001% of the votes cast.
Non-citizens don't vote in federal elections. There's already a federal criminal law that makes it a crime for a non-citizen to vote in a federal election. If you are not a U.S. citizen, you cannot vote for president, for Senate, for House. Okay, so just like set that aside. The real story here is why are Republicans clinging to this new lie as we head in the home stretch? I'll tell you why. Because they have to find a villain. You know, every election cycle, they have to find a villain. And for this election cycle, they are manufacturing a problem that does not exist. They are claiming widespread non-citizen voting in U.S. elections when, in fact, the data shows it is exceedingly rare, so rare that it is almost non-existent in most states. And as I said, it is already illegal. By the way, it's not just my opinion that it doesn't happen. This is the opinion of everyone from the Brennan Center to the Cato Institute. It does not happen.
But that doesn't stop Republicans from peddling this lie. House Speaker Mike Johnson tried to get Congress to pass a national proof of citizenship requirement to register to vote as part of a temporary government spending bill that is necessary to avert a government shutdown before the election. He did this knowing that it would fail in the Democratic-controlled Senate, and President Biden would have vetoed the legislation if it had made his desk. Several Republican members of Congress joined Democrats in opposing this legislation, tanking Johnson's proposal. Donald Trump on Truth Social said Republicans shouldn't vote for any funding bill that didn't include this proof of citizenship legislation. Congress eventually did end up passing a clean funding bill and did avert a government shutdown before the election.
Donald Trump has made clear he's not going to acknowledge that he lost this election if he loses this election. Let's be honest. Republican elected officials, U.S. senators, members of the House, Republican governors, they are refusing to say that they and Donald Trump will abide by the outcome of free and fair elections. Well, if they're already laying the groundwork to say that they're not going to abide by the results of free and fair elections, they're going to need an excuse. And so they are right now floating various excuses. I don't think that non-citizen voting will be the only excuse. Just like in 2020, it wasn't just drop boxes. It wasn't just vote by mail. Right? There were lots of excuses that ultimately Donald Trump settled on, including, dead Venezuelan dictators, right? Mythological creatures. So I don't think this is the only one that they will have, but this is the one that, as you say, everywhere you turn right now, right-wing radio, TV, TikTok, Truth Social, wherever you go right now, right-wingers are making this their cause célèbre.
Thanks for watching Democracy Docket. If you want to stay up to date on the latest voting and election news in the courts, please subscribe to our newsletter. So you can click the link right here on the screen or in the description of this video. I'm Sophie, and I'll see you next time.